Well, hi there folks. So what have we got here then? If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I've converted quite a few of those cheap little foamy chuck gliders to radio control. In fact, no less than 20 of them if you include the 5 mini littles that I built. Well, I spotted one of these on a Facebook radio control group, checked it out, and I bought the kit. Makes a change from the little, but I thought it was a pretty nice looking aircraft, a bit bigger and a bit more elegant than a little glider, and this video is a look at my conversion of it to radio control. It's not going to be a detailed build blog because I've covered nearly all of it in numerous build blogs before of the little gliders, and the techniques are much the same, although in many ways this is easier because the wing is actually supplied in 2 parts and is attached here. It is slightly more expensive than the littles, which when they're in the shops, which is around springtime, they are about £10. This was actually £16 including delivery, which was probably about the best price I could find. I've seen them for about 20 or more online, but for £16 it does make a nice looking plane. At 1.2 metres it is a bigger wingspan than the little, and I think a nicer shaped wing. So let's get on with it and start with what you get in the box. Let's see, it's going to be tricky getting this out. I hope I haven't lost any bits because... Anyway, let's see. It is bigger, it's got a 1200mm wingspan. Oh, look at that. Plenty of nose weight. Foam quality looks pretty good. Starboard wing. Oh, it's already got kind of little cutouts here for ailerons and spoilers, whatever. Starboard wing. Port wing, you can see the size of it. You can't really see the size of it because it's too big. Haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with it, but I think it could be a good lightweight soarer. What else is in here? Tail feathers, again with a bit of plastic reinforcement. Oh, bits and pieces, how exciting. Oh good, a bit of carbon and some very nice decals. No instructions inside, only instructions are on the box, which are that simple that basically you don't really need instructions. So I think I put it on the screen, I think it's £14. I think for £14 this is really good. And a couple of little type bracket things here. That obviously goes on here, and they've even given me a screwdriver. And there you go, that's the cockpit cover. So very good, the FX707 S for Sierra. I think this could actually turn out to be a nice flying machine. Let's get it assembled and see where the design centre of gravity is. Instructions on the box aren't great, but it's pretty easy to see looking at it how this goes together, because for a start you've got this thing here which has got holes in it, you've got the wing halves which have got holes in, and you've got this which has got little protrusions on. So in fact the system is, this goes on here like so, this goes on here like so, pretty obvious where that bit went, and one little screw in there. You even get a screwdriver, so I'm assuming it's one of these. Let's see now, is it one of the long ones? No, it might be the longer ones. No, I've got it. You've got 3 holes on the top here which obviously secure this to the body, so it's got to be the short ones. And you've got this little bit here, this little strap that goes just here. Do you want short ones? And then still got 3 little screws there. I'm not sure what they're for. Hopefully it will become apparent. I have to guess it's for the tail feathers. So yes, that's got 2 screw holes in it. Quite a big bird this. So tail feathers, pretty clear there where how this is supposed to go on. You've got 2 holes here and 2 bits there that they fit into. And I'm still going to have 1 screw over. Don't you just hate that? Oh, incidentally, I've screwed up here because I've not put the carbon in. 2 bits of carbon. The long bit is for the main spar, the other bit is to reinforce the fuselage. So I'm going to have to take that off and put that in. But anyway, 2 screws in there. Small bit of carbon goes in there. I don't know why it won't go the whole way. I can't get it all the way in there, and I'm reluctant to try too hard because I won't be able to get it out again. Okay, let's do take 2 on this. I'm going to remove this, put the first piece of carbon in there. I must admit, as I was putting that together, I thought, oh, that still flexes a bit. Why didn't I think about the carbon at that point? Anyway, you're seeing this warts and all, so just back to square one. So what you do is slide the main spar in, which presumably is on the centre of gravity, and I'm going to push these right in. There is actually a little hole there which probably is to tell you that's where the end is. Let's see. But I must say, this is a nicely made kit. I looked online, and in fact it has been around for a while. So yes, right, so that's more like it. I've already shown you this. I'll put this back on. Yeah, what a nice kit. Right, well that is super. I love main wing, little bit of dihedral there, and as I pointed out before, you've already got the cutouts for the ailerons. Just got to snip these bits here, and you've got marked in ailerons there. Okay, so now the fuselage carbon. I've decided to try it with some pliers, and that's definitely as far as it wants to go because it hits a definite stop. So I've just pulled that back 2 or 3 mil, and I'm just going to saw it off just there, like so. And I've made it a bit dirty. I guess if you were being really particular, you could have put a piece of tape across that first to avoid it getting dirty, but that's in there and very strong. So I will now take 2, fix this on, put the vertical stab on, and see where the centre of gravity is. Let's put the cockpit on. Ah, yeah. Yeah, the main spar is there, so it's actually not where that is, it's actually where this groove is, just here. Slightly forward of that maybe. So that's what I'm going to be working to, and let's see what the weight of it is now before I start. Right, and the all-up weight before I start is pretty much spot on 250 grams. Right, so my next step is decide what I'm going to do with it. I think it's probably going to end up tractor, and let's face it, with so much weight in here, it's obviously going to need a bit more carving out, bit of room there for receiver, install servos. Not sure whether I'll bother with the rudder servo, but I must say this is a fine looking piece of kit for £14. Right, so next thing I'm going to do is take out these 2 nose weights and see what it weighs without those. I've just tried, and whatever they've used to actually fix those in without actually doing some serious butchery here, whatever they've used doesn't release it very easily. So I'll cut those out and see what it weighs. Right, so that's my little wire cutting tool that I've used for taking the inside out of fuselages on little chuck gliders, and I think I can probably go down the sides here and just get around those without too much difficulty, but I'm not going to attempt to do it on camera. Right, done. Wasn't particularly easy, and I must say I've actually gone a little bit deep there, although fortunately I haven't gone through the fuselage, but it needs to be done carefully. So that is the nose weight I've got there, and that is, one of them's 40, 81.65, so 82 grams of nose weight. So deduct that from 250, and what have you got? Just under 170, which isn't too bad really. Next step's going to be hollow out some of this fuselage so that I can install receiver, hollow out some of that so I can put a lipo in there, but a fair bit of space here for RC gear. These are my 2 tools that I use for cutting out the foam. I just heat these up over my gas cooker and you can slice away quite nicely. But before I've started, I've just been looking at it because, as I say, I think this was probably at some stage available with the other parts to complete it. I need these because this is what secures the main wing, but I noticed, and of course you've got a little bit here which probably held a receiver. But I noticed there are two holes here for very small servos. Well, I imagine that's what they're for. But also, I had wondered what these grooves were for. And of course there's two of them, and they come from where the servos are. So I've now realised the idea was you probably had those little thin tubes, I forget what they're called, and a little thin wire through for elevator, and on this side rudder. Probably not going to bother with the rudder because I never use it. I rarely ever use it apart from when I've got a plane that's on wheels. But of course it's very good because it keeps the weight forward, and I had mentioned before in a bit of the video, I think, that I was probably going to put a lightweight servo here. Well, far better to keep it all forward. So probably going to try and cut this bit out, make a hollow here, take a bit of this out and try and come through here so that you can actually get some wiring. I'll probably take the edge of that off too, so that I've actually got room for my receiver in there. Take the edge of that off and make a hole through here somehow so that I can get through to LiPo, which is probably going to be here, and of course speed controller and motor. So going to get on and do that now. Right, so there you are, hollowed out a bit here, and in the front end massively hollowed out, and of course now I've got a tunnel through into this compartment here. 2.5 gram elevator servo is going to go in one of those holes there. Might have to move the position of this servo so that the arm is say here, so that it can push a control wire through there, because where it is at the moment I can't see how that could possibly work. It would have to be a really short control arm. Oh, I guess, or maybe what they did was have one round one way and one round the other way. Okay, anyway, it's making progress. Okay then, leaping ahead, muy rápido, that's Spanish for very fast. A lot of progress has been made. I've got this hollowed out, loads of room in here for LiPo. We've got a passage through there so that the wiring can go through from the speed controller and receiver, which will go nicely in there. One big advantage of this, of course, is the fact that you can actually remove the wing, so you're not dependent on hollowing that out all the way through, as in the case with a Lidl. My 2.5 gram servo will sit nicely there so that it can control the elevator via this tube orifice along here. Obviously the plastics are still there so that you can attach the wing. As far as the wing goes, I trimmed around the edges of these because you had to cut those first, although that bevel was already cut, and also deepened that a little bit because it was too stiff. Plus I've got Scotch crystal along the top. But I've covered all that kind of stuff in my other build video, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. And as you can see, the servos are in with these control levers sticking out nicely from the top. That is just the redundant servo lever glued through, which is very easy. And that brings me to the installation of the servos. Now, I've actually used 9 gram servos here. It would have been better to use smaller ones, 2.5s or whatever, because the depth of the wing was such that there was only just enough room to get it in. And in fact, you can see on my videos here that you could actually see daylight through it. There was already a little orifice there, so I trimmed it round with a blade, extended it to take the size of this servo, and with my hot wire tool increased the depth, but it was so thin that you could actually see the colour of the servo through this here. So I've actually put a little piece of white paper inside before I glued it, so that you can't quite see it through. And incidentally, top tip here, when you're gluing these in, don't put masses of glue around it. If you break it or need to remove it for some point, you would have to totally butcher the wing to get it out. So all I do is put a couple of blobs of glue, one there, there's a little one there. On this side, you've just got 1, 2, 3, much easier. And of course, there's already a groove along there to take the wire. And obviously I'm going to have to make a Y lead to connect these two, and they will go nicely through into this orifice here, and where the receiver's going to sit, just here. To that end, I've salvaged this out of another model. It's an FSI6, which goes with my FlySky transmitter. I've actually used this one instead of a micro because I think this might have quite a long range. It's quite a big model, so you're going to be able to fly it quite a long distance. And even though I've never had a problem with the micro receivers, the little tiny ones here, which are in quite a few of my models, and I've flown them quite a long way off, I think I'd be a bit more confident with this receiver. Who knows, might not make any difference. So that's going to go in here. Speed controller can sit in the middle here somewhere. And of course I've now been able to figure the weight distribution of this, and the idea is to use a BR1806, which I've used on quite a few of my models, but I'm going to use it with a 5040 maybe, or maybe a bit smaller, and a 3S 800. And with the 3S in there and the 1806 on the nose here, the centre of gravity is going to work out just about perfectly on this point here, which is where it balanced nicely when it was original and still had the weight in the nose. So basically all I'm doing at the moment is waiting for a speed controller, which is on its way, and I need a longer wire so that I can go through to the elevator, and a bit of tube to glue along there as a feed for it. But basically this is 80–90% finished. I'm very pleased with the way it's gone anyway, and I think I've said it about half a dozen times, but I think it's a really nice looking plane and I'm looking forward to flying it. Well, I've been to modelling shop and bought some 1mm diameter wire to connect to the elevator, and I'm just gluing in some little bits of plastic tube. I don't know where I found this from, but just gluing those in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and probably one about here once that glue's dried for it to operate properly. Got to glue in the control horn there, and once it's dried I can connect that to the servo in there. Right, so control horn is in the elevator, and in case you missed it before, don't go buying special control horns. Everyone has one of these over when they fit a servo. Just cut one of these down and hot glue it in. Perfect for foamies. Right, I'm getting to the last stages of this now. That servo is actually hot glued in. I've got my connecting wire to the elevator fed through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little tubes to the control horn. That works beautifully. I'm just gluing in a little foam board bulkhead there to prevent the Y lead for the aileron servos from fouling it. And I actually notice that the top of that servo there comes very close to that, so just to be sure it doesn't foul on this, I've actually melted a little hole there, space there, to be sure of that. But obviously I'm going to have to kind of connect this to the receiver and then just shove it in best I can into that space with the receiver at the bottom of that hole, so I don't want any possibility that it's going to foul that. Easiest way was, as I say, a bit of hot glue, bit of foam board there, make a little bulkhead. So that's what I'm doing. 10 amp speed controller there, as I said before, loads of room there for the LiPo, and I just put the wing on and tested with my 3S 800, and with it slid back right in there, the centre of gravity is just about perfect on that line there, which I determined before I took out the nose weights where it was designed to be. So that has worked out well. I'm going to get my little tool here and actually go carefully just a little bit further down there to make it easier to get that in if I need to go a little bit further. But you've got to be careful there because there's a little indent. So in other words, there's a slight thin spot there, so got to be careful, but going to very gently go across there, melting that, burning that a little bit lower. But I'm very pleased with the way this is going. I've actually also connected a model finder. Got to find somewhere to poke that so that it actually will be audible if this does end up in some bushes or a tree somewhere. But let's jump back now a step or two to when I fitted the motor on the nose. Now normally I just hot glue these straight on to the nose of the foamie, but I came up with the idea of just making some little wooden inserts so that I can screw this on, which makes it easier to adjust the thrust angle if I need to, or just change, or if I want to change the motor it makes it easier too. So one thing, if you're going to mount these kind of brushless motors, you've got to make sure you've got enough clearance at the back end for that to spin, because otherwise it's going to foul. But anyway, that's going to go on there like so, 3 screws, just like that. And as you can see, plenty of room in here for speed controller and the LiPo. So there it is, looks pretty tidy. And that's a 5045 prop on there, which might be what I use. I've used them before on the 1806. And a little bit of right thrust and a little bit of down thrust. People ask me on YouTube how many degrees. I have no idea, I just guess a couple of degrees. And it seems to do the trick. And a couple of hours later, here she is, totally finished and ready for a maiden. Even the decals on, which I must say was probably about the hardest part of the whole job. Getting them on because they kept tangling up and messing up. But anyway, I managed to do it in the end. And while I'm on that, because this is transparent, you could actually see the servos. I was hoping the decals would cover it up. So I actually put a little bit of kitchen roll over that, which just disguises it a little bit. But anyway, getting to the point, yes, ready for a maiden. Getting back to the build, there was a bit of an annoying hiccup. You may notice different speed controller in there. Why is that, Bob? Well, despite having tested it before fitting it to check that the motor was running the right way, when I actually got it all installed and connected, put the LiPo in, I'll just show you that, connected it, and when I tested, only one servo was working. This one was kind of working but reluctantly. So obviously I had to take the wing off again, connect servo testers, eventually tried it with another speed controller, and the cheap Chinese 10 amp Simonk speed controller just didn't work. Obviously there wasn't enough current output from the Beck. The other thing that was happening too was it kept resetting, and you could hear it beeping because it would reset the motor. So basically I had to fit another speed controller, and it's the second one I've had to bin. So I've made a vow to myself not to buy any more cheap Chinese speed controllers. In addition, because this speed controller was heavier than the 10 amp one, it's meant the LiPo has got to go even further back in, but it still goes nicely right back there, and the centre of gravity is perfect just on this line here. Which brings me nicely to the antennas, and I'll put a bit of Scotch crystal on those just to stop them flopping about. I mentioned model finder. Well, I hollowed that out a bit and that fits nicely in there. Motor, as I think I said, is the BR1806 with a 5045 prop, and there's probably more than enough power at even half throttle with that 3S in there. So all in all, finished, and it wasn't too bad. And price was, I think, £16 delivered. So a very cheap and easy project. I'm sure it's going to fly well. If you'd like to see the maiden of this, hit the old subscribe button. And if you've enjoyed my video here, please give it a like there, because it helps my algorithms. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I will catch you all again later when this beauty, the FX707 Albatross, gets its maiden. But I'll stop waffling on. Happy New Year. And I'll leave you with one of my favourite littles. In fact, it's a mini little, my mini little biplane, and a rather nice flight that I had this summer. Happy flying for 2025. Bye for now.